Welcome, story lovers. This is Laurel McHargue, and you're listening to and watching, if you're on this YouTube video, Alligator Preserves. I have a very special guest with me today. I always have special guests, but Jerry's extra special.
Ooh.
I'm going to introduce you to author, columnist, radio show host, and denizen of Mother Earth, Jerry Fabyanic. Jerry, welcome to Alligator Preserves.
Oh, thanks, Laurel. Just thrilled to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you here this day after Thanksgiving. We're recording this the day after Thanksgiving. So tell me, what was your meal yesterday?
Oh, we did something a little bit unusual. I ended up making pork barbecue sandwiches and with sweet potatoes and whatnot. And I'm not a big turkey fan. I like it, but, it's kind of grown out of that. So since I was a boy, when I would, crave the drumstick every time.
Oh, you're a drumstick guy. I am a wing girl, and that's pretty much, I'm like, the wings are mine. And this is something about the wing meat is just extra special. Maybe it's because I've always dreamt of flying, and someday I want to fly, I guess, eating those turkey wings. I don't know. Anyway, Jerry, you are, as you mentioned, you're a self-proclaimed denizen of Mother Earth. Tell me about your relationship with Mother Earth.
Oh, wow. Out in nature is the one place I feel totally comfortable without any oppression, just free and so connected. I just feel energies there. And whether I'm puttering in my garden or going for a long hike, climbing a 14er, skiing down a slope, or going for a run, whatever it is, I just feel one with nature there, and I can detach from all the pressures and the ills and the struggles of the world.
So you mentioned 14ers, and for those people who might live on the coasts listening to this, tell them what a 14er is.
Well, it's a mountain any higher than 14,000 feet and higher in altitude. And in Colorado, we officially have 54, and then there's always some give and take because the Geological Society says one thing, the Colorado Mountain Club says another. But generally, the rule of thumb is there needs to be a half-mile distance from point A to point B between two peaks and about a 500-foot drop in elevation between them. So actually, there's some sub-peaks like Cameron, which is a sub-peak, I believe, of Lincoln, that is actually higher than some of the other 14ers around. But it's, but generally we say 54s, and I've done 34 of them. I've bagged 34s, we say.
You're a 14er bagger. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, you are the author of a book, Sisyphus Wins. Tell me how your beliefs about nature and Mother Earth, how do they play in with this novel, which is described as a novel about self-acceptance, forgiveness, and triumph?
Well, and it is the setting actually for the story is on a mountain initially, and it is Mount of the Holy Cross where it's set, and that's one of the 14ers in Colorado. And when I tell the story, Jonathan, who's a protagonist, the story opens up with him going for a long hike on this one particular day. He's completely exhausted, and his intent is to climb the mountain. Now, this isn't just an ordinary 14er. It's not one with what we call a lot of exposure, but it's long and enduring. And so I start the story off with that, and while he's in the process of making this climb, he has an ordeal, and one thing leads to another, and he starts thinking back to a time in his life, and that's where the story starts to unfold.
Okay. So this leads me right into my next question. Your main character, Jonathan Slovanko. Mm-hmm. How much of Jonathan is Jerry?
Wow, that's a great question. I say that I call the novel memoir-ish, that it's not a memoir, it's a work of fiction, but I draw heavily on prior experiences. And I change names, and I certainly embellish and recreate and so on. But I really tried to look at what I authentically went through as a boy, as a young man coming of age, and what it was like. And so I think the best stories are the ones that we can identify with, the more serious ones, and then the more humorous ones that, like I had to, when I was 16 years old, break into my mother's house because she threatened to lock me out if I wasn't in by 11. It was after midnight. So it was like, how do I get in there? And I managed to do it. So that's a fun part of the story too.
My mother used to, she'd stay up, I'm the fourth of five girls in my family, and coming home from a date or whatever, if we were parked outside the house for too long, the front light switch, she would flick it on and off. And yeah, that was our signal to get your butt in the house.
Next step out, she's coming out and knocking on the car door.
Exactly. We both have had Catholic mothers, right?
We did. Yes, very Catholic. Yes, we did.
We'll get to that. One of the incidents that happens in the book, Jonathan falls on Mount of the Holy Cross. Is this an experience that you actually had?
It is. And I draw on it. It was a day I climbed Holy Cross, and I was really exhausted, but it was just like, I just need to do this. And so when you start on Holy Cross, you start at the parking lot, you're around 10,000 feet or so. And you start to climb. It's a steady pace up to what is called Half Moon Pass. And once you get to Half Moon Pass, the drop then is about 900 feet, almost 1,000 feet down into this valley. Ooh. And it's not a cliff in a way, but it's steep, and it's rocky, and there's roots sticking out. And you really have to be careful about your footing. Otherwise, bad things can happen. And it was one of those, and I just got a little sloppy. And I literally caught my toe in a root, and I just started going forward. And I literally just put my arm up like this and braced myself and hit and rolled. And of course, it completely stunned me. And, not being a smart guy, I was hiking. And this day here, I had to hike it alone anyway, but there were other people coming. I knew that. But basically, I was on my own at that point. And so it was like, well, what do you do? Well, the first thing you start to do is, wiggle the fingers and toes. And if they're moving, okay. I didn't hit my head on a rock, although it looked perilously close.
Yeah.
And so I, one thing manipulated, moved around because I was, head down the hill and had my day pack on and got back to my feet and, took a sip out of the water bladder and shook everything around and looked back up the hill and said, well, I can go back. That way is home and safety, or I can keep going. And the choice I made.
Yes, so. You'll have to read the book because this is memoir-ish, but definitely embellished. Speaking of embellishing, so my first novel, Miss, was loosely based on my first year of teaching 7th grade English. And loosely based. My main character, the teacher, the 7th grade teacher, I had to make her young and single and, perky, so I could throw in some, embellish with some romance or whatever. Friends of mine, friends and family who have read it, cannot separate the main character from me when they read it. And so it influences, I think, the way they read it. I'm wondering if any of your readers hear your voice in Sisyphus Wins, and I wonder how that affects their reading experience, or have they said anything about how that might affect their experience?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. It's a great question. What I've discovered, Laurel, is that there are several different groups that read. The first is the ones that know me very close, and that's family. Known them all my life, of course. And so when they read it, they can identify with a lot of the stories, not mine in particular, but for example, I have described, I wanted a scene in which Jonathan goes back and visits with his mother and has a very powerful conversation with her. And so I literally pictured the house I grew up in, the yard, everything. My mother's practices, her habits, and so on. And so I describe it into the book, and Jonathan goes there. And so what the result is that my siblings, when they read it, and even my older nephews and nieces who remember their grandmother and her house, they really start connecting. And even siblings is like, oh, who am I in the story sort of thing. Close friends who know me very well will step back a little bit because they don't have that experience that my siblings do, but they know me very intimately and therefore can identify and understand, considerably what I've gone through. Others take a more objective. It's a book. It's a story. It's in the third person. They don't know me personally. And so they're able to detach from it and actually read the story, I believe, in a more distant, objective way in which they can then start like, okay, how does this apply to me? What are the themes and so forth there? And so that becomes more me. So it depersonalizes it from the author. And so they're able to focus on the story itself.
Okay, so a lot of people read literature and fiction for entertainment. I read somewhere that your audience is for more of a sophisticated reader who wants some more provocative literature rather than pure entertainment. What makes Sisyphus Wins provocative?
Well, that I am a retired English teacher. I love literature. I've studied, and so I draw heavily on literary allusions. I include them, biblical allusions, metaphors. And sometimes I think some of that gets lost in on some people. It doesn't matter. I mean, you get out what you get out of it there. But readers who are well read, and for example, one of my favorite stories, and I draw heavily on it, is Moby Dick, and Ahab is like one of the greatest characters ever in the history of literature, from my point of view, of course.
Why?
But,
why?
Oh, his struggle, titanic struggle with the universe, when he defies the universe itself, and how through this very natural incident in which Moby Dick bites his leg and from the knee down it's gone, and so he has to walk on the peg leg from there on, and he swears to get revenge, and he will do everything in his power to get back at this beast that was simply, as Starbucks said, simply defending itself. I mean, but Ahab sees this in cosmic proportions and so forth. And, there's that great line in there, and how he heaped all his hatred and anger on the hump of the whale. And it's just, again, a very cosmic story. So I think it's just powerful. I think it's very telling for us. And so I include that in the story.
Do you have any experiences from your life that made you relate to Ahab in the wanting to get revenge aspect?
That's a great question. I don't believe so. I remember when I believe it was either 11th or 12th grade, I can't remember, and Sister Leah was my English teacher, and we had the opportunity to pick a book off the shelf, and I just grabbed Moby Dick, and I said, I want to read this. And it was difficult. And one of my fun things, if I wanted to really torture my juniors, was to drag them kicking and screaming through it. But I learned also how to teach it. You don't expect people to read, everything. It's there, all the detail that gets into the size of the whale and how many bones it has and all that other stuff. But really the essence of the story itself. And it can really gravitate towards that, and particularly at the end there when the ship's going down, he's going down, and he's still cursing the universe, and I spit my last spit at thee, and I express my hate at you, and all this other stuff there. I mean,
spoiler alert for those of you who haven't finished Moby Dick yet.
Oh, no, you got to read it. And so, like I say, when I was just a young guy, older teenager, something just drew me to the story, and I loved it ever since.
Well, that's a good enough reason to love a book. For those of you just joining us, we are talking with Jerry Fabyanic, author, columnist, radio show host, retired teacher, denizen of Mother Earth, marathon runner, skier, climber of 14er bagger. Jerry, why have you chosen to live such a mundane life?
Oh, I just don't know when to stop. And I always say, I'll stop when I drop. And life is meant to be lived. and I never was one to just to sit on a couch and, watch life go by. I'm not just an observer. I want to be a participant. And that's just been in my nature from the beginning. I grew up, we didn't have much when we were young. My father died tragically at a very early age. And so it was difficult for the family at times there, just meeting resources. But one of the beauties of it also, first of all, we didn't realize that we were poor. We just was. We just lived it. But our entertainment was out in the woods. My mother had this garden, and which my father had even a greater garden, when he was alive. But the backdrop of it was the woods. So we'd go out there and we'd play, my little young friends, and we'd be running around playing cowboy Indians, whatever it was. I always loved to be out in nature. And that hasn't changed. It's still part of me now. I think of those times, and I could just breathe it and suck in the energies while I'm there. And so why sit around inside a house? I mean, it's great if you're there reading a book or doing something like that, but sit there to watch TV all the time, be entertained, be passive. Excuse me, not my thing.
Right, right. Where did you grow up?
Yeah, near Pittsburgh in
Okay.
Western Pennsylvania.
All righty. And then what made you move to Colorado other than the incredible mountains? And right now I'm looking outside. We've got, well, I can't see Mount Massive. Mount Massive and Mount Elbert being the tallest 14er in Colorado, are right out my back window here. I can't see them right now because it's snowing quite a bit. But what brought you to Colorado?
Well, the prompt was that I had a brother who had moved here for a job. So I came to visit and took a drive up. And this was back in 1975. And I was in my mid-20s and took a drive up into the Rocky Mountain National Park, hiked out on a snowfield, sat around or looked around there, and I said, holy shit, this is it. And I just wanted to move to Colorado. And because something was drawing me, and the somethings were the mountains, and they still do. And then I look back, because, we can get in perhaps, discussion about Joseph Campbell and the hero's path and the journey and all that other. And I realized that that was all part of what was to be. And I needed to go on my journey. I didn't realize it at the time. It was a very personal journey, and it still is. And hence the book is one of the results of it.
And so for readers out there who have not yet read the book, and we haven't really discussed this yet, but Jerry, this is a story, as you said, it's very personal, and it has to do with your coming out as a gay man. Would you be okay with telling our listeners about your experience of coming out?
Sure.
When that happened and how?
Well, I realized when I was a little boy, I was not attracted to girls, to women and so forth. And I didn't know what to do with that. And I was raised in a Catholic family, went to a Catholic schools right up through 12th grade. And so what do you do? How do I do it? I didn't have any mentors. So I reached out to, a couple teachers, male teachers. One was a secular or whatever, and the other was a priest. And they were very, very kind, very supportive, encouraging. But you have to keep in mind, this was like in the late 1960s. It's not like today.
Right.
And okay, so I started getting a grasp on this here, but it's still not something that was socially acceptable, particularly in that environment. And so, there were some difficult times there, and hence the journey. So I make my way to Colorado, and what do I want to do with my life now professionally? And the only thing I ever truly wanted to be was a teacher. So I did, two of my friends, I talked to them and they said, then be a teacher. Okay, so what's all that entail? Now, again, I'm now in the 70s, 1970s and 80s. And to be a very open out gay man at that time was just not doable, and to be in a public school setting. And so it ended up, I had to keep it in the closet. My close friends knew that sort of stuff there. That was okay. But it was an ordeal, to go through. But when I look back, no regrets. So much in my life now, the growth, the strength that I have, the openness, the compassion I have for people who are just struggling in their own ways for their own reasons, whether it's sexuality or whatever it is. I think I just have a better feel for what they might be going through because of my own personal experiences.
So you never had any negative repercussions while you were a teacher, or you didn't come out during any of your teaching years?
No, I never came out, and I never did. But what I got a feel for, I eventually had started teaching English at Summit High School in Frisco, Colorado. And, I taught 9th and 11th grade. Again, my close friends knew, but it wasn't something that obviously I wanted to be open about. But I was, not hiding it in a sense that, to try to avoid, because we would get into incredible discussions on the whole wide range of issues, particularly at the junior level. And I began to sense that, 17-year-olds are pretty sophisticated. They figure it out.
Right.
And I had to laugh because officially I didn't come out to my family until I was in my mid-50s.
What? Your mid-50s?
I was in my mid, yeah, I know. And I said, this is crazy. I just need to do this. So I wrote a letter, and I have, a large family, and I sent it to all my siblings. And some of them were surprised, and most were very supportive. Yeah, but my older nephews and nieces in particular, they looked at it and they said, what's new? We knew that all along about Uncle Jerry, so it's no big deal. And I really look back at my students, the older students, that way too. And I said, it's no big deal. We're here for a reason. That's get education. He's our teacher, and he's challenging us. That's what's important.
That's wonderful. Hallelujah, right? Oh my goodness. Scariest thing that's ever happened to you?
Wow.
Other than coming out to your family at 55. I mean, were you afraid? How did you feel when you wrote that? And do you still have that letter? Do you still have a copy of that letter?
Oh, very much. Yeah. On that particular issue, no. It was just like, you're just going to do this. It's just done, avoidance.
It's time.
It's time. And I'm going to give a plug here before I get into the other question here. I just yesterday went to see Boy Erased.
Okay.
It's a powerful story about a boy. It's based on a true account, by the way, of a man who grew up in the South and was forced, like many others in the South, in that area, to go through what is called conversion therapy.
Oh, boy.
And it was an ordeal. So he wrote, the gentleman, Gerard Conley, wrote the book. And I just happened to pick it up a couple of years ago when I was at the Boulder bookstore. I was going through, and I read it, and I was just like blown away. And in my next novel, by the way, I create a character who's already in that way. So I already started getting my head around, what is this like to go through conversion therapy? So it's now been made into a film. What's it name? Russell Crowe plays the dad, mom.
We'll look it up. I'll have a link to both the book and the film, and when I do this,
okay,
the show notes.
That'd be great. Yeah,
Boy Erased.
And, Boy Erased, and but there's a scene, in which, because this young man is dealing with this, he's forced into this therapy, and he's finally like, this is not working, and he's and he has this conversation, again, spoiler alert, with his dad at the end, and it comes about, you need to start understanding me. We're done playing the game here. That if we want to talk, we need to be talking straight at each other here, and we can't be stepping around it. And so there's this honesty that has to be there in front of people. If we're going to be lying about ourselves and hiding stuff, we can never truly be authentic, especially with those you're connected with most, and that's your family. Right. So back to your question about, was it scary when I wrote the letter? No, I was a little apprehensive when it went out, but it was like, it is where it is. It's c'est la vie, and there you go. And off that, the letters went, and the rest is history.
Nice.
But the other, the initial question you asked me, the scariest moment in my life, was based upon a real incident. And I was beat up and punched out, and I had a knife held to me. And that was not pleasant because I didn't know if I was going to survive that or not.
How old
I
were
did.
you? How old were you when that happened, Jerry?
Oh, gosh. I want to say in my 30s. Yeah, I would say in my 30s, yes. Okay. But these are part of the experiences and the ordeals that you have. And I read this wonderful article, and I can't think of the name of it, but it talks about what we carry from our childhood. We know that psychologically. But for those of us that grew up in a culture in which you were considered less than human, perhaps, or the others shunned you or ridiculed you, you carry those with you into later life. And so, for example, the shunning, and that, oh, I didn't get invited to this or that. And you start to make a connection. You say, okay, the reason is because they don't want me there because I'm gay, or whatever it is. And we can't say that. I'm just not invited. I'm not allowed to be there. And so what ends up happening for gay men and women is that they'll carry that experience into their later life. And they really have to work on saying, maybe it's not that after all. But these psychological learning scars stay with you a long time.
And by the way, The Shunning would be a great book title.
Thank you. Yeah, because I wanted to, have a couple in me I want to write, but thank you. I appreciate that. Yes.
Along these same lines, do you have any fears for the LGBTQ community today?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Tell me.
We somehow there's a magical elixir over the last decade. 10 years ago, we elected our first African-American president. That didn't end racism in America. If anything, it's even more pronounced and more out there. With the Supreme Court now ruling that laws against same-sex marriage are inherently unconstitutional under the 14th Amendment, whatever, does not end bigotry. We see this happening right here in Colorado with the incident with the cake. That the baker just refused to do it for whatever reason. And so even though he's a public business and there's this great big thing going on. And the threats over the last couple of years to people on the margins, okay, whether it's LGBTQ, other races, immigrants, etc., have greatly increased because it's like these people have been empowered to take it out. So yes, I'm concerned. It's always going to be a struggle, and but the answer is not putting your head in the sand. The answer is standing up there, speaking out, and being courageous about not denying who you are or anything like that. And just say, here I am, and this is who I am, and I'm a good person, and I do good things, and I'm going to keep doing those there. And the vast majority of people get it. We see that here in Colorado 25 years ago when we passed Amendment 2, which at that time legalized discrimination against LGBT folks by landlords. The Supreme Court threw that out, within a year or two. But here we are, not only 25 years later, having the legal right to marry the man, woman of our lives, but our governor now is an openly gay man with a partner. They're not married yet, or I don't know if they ever will, but that's their business, But, and he won by a big margin. So that shows us where society is going and how much we've opened up and accepted. I love it.
Awesome. So to my listeners out there, get educated on the issues and vote. For goodness sake, vote, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So let's end this on a happy note. I'm going to see you, is it next weekend, for the Georgetown Christmas Fair at the Georgetown Heritage Center? Would you tell everyone about this event?
Yeah, I'm excited about it. It's the second year. And what it is in Georgetown, we have an old schoolhouse built in 1874. It's been restored, and we use it as what we call our heritage center. So last year, at a prompting of a fellow author, and just said, "Hey, I wonder if we can ever sell books in Georgetown." I happen to know someone who lives there, me. And so one thing led to another. And within 4 weeks, I pulled it together. And each of the 4 days, it's always the first 2 weekends in December, so Saturday, Sunday. And last year, I reserved the room at the Heritage Center, and I had each day 9 to 12 authors. So it was very successful. We sold a lot of books. And I thought, okay, let's, seems to be a strong interest. Let's double this. And so I reserved 2 rooms. And I am now 100% booked on all 4 days, which means at least 24 authors will be there, 47 total different authors coming to share their works. And the genres, the whole spread of them, from children's and young adults, fantasy, adult fiction, science fiction, historical, Colorado landscapes, and stories on Colorado history, and what's else, self-help and spiritual. And I mean, we just got it all covered. And they're excited about being here. So I just love if people come and buy some books because, yeah.
So you will be there on the 1st and 2nd and the 8th and 9th of December. I will be there on the 1st and 2nd and the 9th of December, along with, as you mentioned, so many other award-winning authors.
Yes.
And one thing I failed to mention earlier is that Jerry and I met at a CIPA meeting, CIPA, Colorado Independent Publishers Association, which if you are an author, a wannabe author, an already published author, this is an amazing organization to be a member of. They have monthly meetings where they bring in experts on all different topics in the publishing arena, and you have people there who can provide anything you might need for help. So it's a great organization. And that's where I met Jerry. And Jerry, there's a poster behind you. Tell me about that. I see your book cover there, and if you have a copy of your book, show the audience that as well.
Oh, yeah. Yes, and I drew the title of the book. First of all, is Sisyphus Wins, and I had made the fallacious assumption that when someone saw the name Sisyphus, they would immediately get it, okay, and understand what it's about. Wrongo bongo. Here I get lost in my literary world. And
poor Sisyphus, because Sisyphus does not win in the original story, right?
No, he doesn't. And it is the story of a man who pushes a rock, as you can see, up a hill, and for eternity. He's condemned by the gods to do that for disrespecting the gods and, refusing to die and all this other stuff there. So it's a metaphor for life for us. Well, the original back cover looked like this. It was somewhat plain. It was good. But what I discovered was that when I would go out and talk to people, they say, well, who's Sisyphus? What is it? Some people couldn't even say the name. And so I said, well, if I tell you the story, as soon as I would, almost invariably people get it. Oh, yeah, I've heard that. Well, then also, what's this about? Because if you look on the cover, as I said, it takes place, the story itself, on Mount of the Holy Cross. And so you have the Christian motif of the cross there, okay? But you also have...
And that's not Photoshop, by the way. That's not Photoshop. That's how it looks when there's snow in there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And Sisyphus, of course, is the Greek, and so the rational. And so I draw on both of those, as powerful elements in the story. So I recreated, as I said, the back cover and recreated, and so made that poster. So when we go out and read, like you're going to be at the Heritage Center and displaying all your works, you're going to have posters and banners and so forth. And I was particularly excited because I have a young friend over in Europe I met some years ago when I was hiking. I went over a visit and a tour of Greece. He's Greek, of course, and he carried my book to the top of Mount Olympus.
Oh, my goodness.
There's my book, sitting at the top of Mount Olympus. Thank you, Stephanos. And took a picture. So I had to blow that up and say, yeah, it's there. It was there. And again, drawing on those metaphors and so forth. So yeah, it all came together, and there's so much in the story. And it's one that I've had people tell me, I need to reread it. Once you read it through, you get the storyline, but reread it again and start reading it deeper and looking for those allusions and the settings and so on, because, there's just a lot in it.
And tell me about Bighorn Book Nook.
Oh, yes. What that is a result of that I also do podcasting, as you do. And I do it through primarily the radio station that I have been a guest or a host on for the last 14 years or so. And that's KYGT Radio in Clear Creek County. So it's clearcreekradio.com. And for many years, I was doing interviews, mostly social, political. And then after I produced a book, I came up with the idea, well, maybe I could start talking to authors and tell us about what you got in, just like you're doing with me. And it's taken off. Oh my gosh. And so what I do is I record them. And at first I was putting the audio files onto my website, jerryfabyanic.com, but they were kind of getting lost in there and at the same time overwhelming the site. And so I created a whole new one and I said, okay, I need a name. What's this look like? And so I called it the Bighorn Book Club. So the Bighorn Book Club is any author who's come on my radio show and we've talked and I've recorded interviews. So I put it onto that website. Yours are on there. Yay. And yay. And you just go to bighornbookclub.com, click on Colorado authors, and you'll see a plethora of icons of books. And you click on that, and behind every single one of them is the author in his or her own voice talking about him herself, the book, etc. And it's just been wonderful. I'm getting great, feedback from people who just want to know, just like we're doing here, who's the person behind the pen? And so that we can appreciate what she or he is writing and producing.
Well, I'm a big believer in authors helping other authors, especially indie authors. We're in a tough market, and I don't believe we're competing with one another because we all have our own voice, and we're all creating so many different things. Jerry, how can people reach you?
Well, you can check out my website, Jerry Fabyanic, and that's spelled Jerry with a J, and Fabyanic, F as in Frank, ABYANIC.com. And you can email me, jerry@jerryfabyanic.com. I also do a couple blogs. One is more spiritual, uplifting. I call it Higher Living Reflections. And sometimes they're just fun little things. Sometimes they're a little bit more serious. And you helped me a month or so ago when I read yours and you went like, okay, I'm so done with pumpkin. I'm not sure if those were your words.
Lost the love and feeling for pumpkin.
That's what it was. You lost a loving feeling for pumpkin. And I'm like, what? So I had fun with that. And because it still is in this day here, with the big debate, is it pumpkin or pecan? Well, it's a pumpkin pie. That's what it's about. And so in the blog entry, I then think of Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin and Linus in the Patch. And, so I started talking about Linus and when he's out there and when, Charlie Brown says, when you going to quit believing something like this? And Linus fires right back at him and says, when you quit believing in a big old guy with a red suit and says, ho, ho, ho,
There you go. Hey, there you go.
It must be a difference in denominations. So, at any rate, I write on stuff like that. Again, uplifting, some insightful things. Sometimes they're a little bit more serious. Like I wrote one a month or two ago called A Good Death. And, so something, again, soulful to think of. My other one is more social political. I also write for our local paper, the Clear Creek Current. And so I put all those articles up there. I call that Earthwise. And so there are two different blogs. You just click on them and you can read them or not, whichever. And if you want to sign up for get the Higher Living Reflections, when you go to my website, just fill out the little form. It says, add me to the mailing list. That's what it's about, is the Higher Living Reflections blog. And then I communicate also. So when we have events like the Bighorn Book Nook in Georgetown, then I send e-blast out about that too, just to give you a heads up, say, hey, Laurel McHargue's going to be in town, so, get ready here, because he's doing some great stuff.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I will have links to everything that we talked about today with my show notes and a couple of photos that you sent me. Jerry, what kind of preserves do you spread on your toast?
Ooh, preserves. Oh, cherry. Definitely cherry. Sometimes blueberry, but I eat a lot of blueberries in my granola in the morning too. So, but for some reason, I just love, so cherries.
Nice. Well, stay warm. I'm looking out the back window and I see you don't have any snow going on there in Georgetown, do you?
We got a little bit. It's coming. We can get 3 to 5, they say tomorrow, which means 8 to 12 possibly.
Nice. Well, I expect that you're going to be out every day. Skiing? You ski cross country?
I do ski, but I'm going to take a year off from the alpine downhill. And because one thing I've lost that love and feeling for, speaking of like you said about pumpkin, is the Nordic, the backcountry. And I just love getting out there. And so I have my old cross-country skis, which, suffice, but they're not good enough. So I'm going to upgrade myself to my personal treat here to a good solid pair of backcountry skis. And I got my snowshoes. So that's going to be my outdoor snow focus this winter as opposed to downhill. And right now, as you know, we are getting lots and lots of that good white stuff out there. So it's going to be fun no matter what.
And the sun is shining on your face right now, and it's still coming down in buckets right here. Jerry,
I thought it was my aura.
No, of course, that's what it was. I'm looking forward to seeing you. People out there, go to Georgetown, go to the Georgetown Heritage Center to meet me and Jerry and a whole bunch of other really awesome authors. And I believe they have crafters there too, other than just authors. And December 1st and 2nd and December 8th and 9th between 10 and 4. I'll have links to the information for that too. And Jerry, absolute best of luck with your book and your future books. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Laurel. Just so enjoyed it. And we'll talk more.
All righty. Bye.
Bye now.